Hello again, and welcome to a very special Halloween episode of the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. I'm your host, Paige, and today I'll be talking about some of the fun myths and legends about the Halloween version of the witch. So I'm talking stuff like flying brooms, Eye of Newt, black cats, and Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched, and that trick nose. We've also got a very Halloween-appropriate sketchy herb and magic rock that are sure to make your magic just a little bit spookier. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some good old-fashioned Halloween fun. Happy Halloween! Yeah. Did everyone like my little novelty doorbell? That's what trick-or-treaters got to ring tonight. I'm really excited. So I'm sure it comes as no surprise to all of you that Halloween is my favorite holiday. I love all the cheesy decor and the candy and the scary costumes and the silly movies, and I really love the cliches. The slightly more serious pagan Sabbath Samhain is one I've never actually really properly celebrated because I'm just really, really attached to my not-so-serious North American holiday. Very attached. Plus, ghosts are super scary. Super scary. I'm not really a ghost person. I respect ghosts, but ghosts are not really my style. So, I like to stick with the kind of fun Halloween stuff. I like some kind of old school Halloween stuff, but like most everything else, I think the 90s version of Halloween is my favorite because it's mine. So before I get into any fun Halloween stuff, I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who has been really supportive during and, after my unplanned summer hiatus. It was very unplanned, very sudden, and I'm very happy to be back now, but a lot changed in that short time that I was away, and I'm still getting back to a routine. So thanks everyone for being patient, and I hope to get into some sort of regular flow really, really soon. Because it's been a while since I've had an episode go out, I want to thank everyone who has been contributing through Patreon, and you can find me on patreon.com/thefatfeministwitch, and there you can contribute to the show. There are monthly amounts, and every amount has a fun little prize attached to it, so you can contribute anywhere from $1 to $30 on a monthly basis, and no amount is too small at all. So thank you to Megan, Jenny, Barbara, Sue, Amarantha, Kate, Beanie, and Zoe, and to those who gave a high enough amount to earn an executive producer credit. My executive producers are Herbal Moon Apothecary. You can find on Facebook or Instagram or at herbalmoonapothecary.com. I link to them through my support page on the website. They make really beautiful organic and herbal healing and body products. So, you've got your tinctures and your salves and your balms. And they make it all out of Las Vegas. Even if you're a super broke ass like me and can't afford to buy any just yet, I highly recommend checking out their Instagram where they post really beautiful pictures. So thank you so much, guys. That means a lot to me. I also want to thank Kay, who's been an active listener and a participator since I started the podcast and the blog. She's always got something really useful and constructive to say. She enters my contests. She comments on the Facebook page. It's really a pleasure having you as a listener, Kay, so thank you very much. And last but not least, Morgan, who actually contributed the highest amount possible. Thank you, Morgan. If anyone out there is looking for a good tarot reading, you can actually contact Morgan for that. Her email address is theamethystwitchtarot@gmail.com. And she described her services so well, I'm just going to tell you what she says. She says, I do sliding scale prices and offer options for people with accessibility needs. I specialize in relationships and have formed my practice by queering up tarot and making my readings more inclusive. Bad fucking ass, Morgan. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I really hope some of you guys message Morgan for a reading. It's theamethystwitchtarot@gmail.com. So thank you to everyone who has contributed, who has listened, who has shared my stuff around. Thank you very much. I'm really, really happy to be back, and I am very happy to be doing a silly, cheesy Halloween show for you right now. A little spider comes down and bites your finger when you ring it. Okay, so we're having some old-fashioned Halloween fun here, cheesy fun. So before I get started on the witchy stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys a scary story. Do you guys like scary stories? I like to read scary stories around Halloween because my mom is weird and like to read us scary stories before bed kind of year round. I don't know why. So there was this one book we always had in the house, and I'm looking at it right now. It is a preschool to grade 1 level reading book. Right up my alley. So it's In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories by Alvin Schwartz. My favorite story in the book was one that was so terrifying that it gave me regular nightmares. And I'm going to read it to you guys now. So prepare to get scared. This story is called The Green Ribbon. Once there was a girl named Jenny. She was like all the other girls except for one thing. She always wore a green ribbon around her neck. There was a boy named Alfred in her class. Alfred liked Jenny, and Jenny liked Alfred. One day he asked her, "Why do you wear that ribbon all the time?" "I cannot tell you," said Jenny. But Alfred kept asking, "Why do you wear it?" And Jenny would say, "It is not important." And of course the illustrations have very incredible mid-80s high school style fashions drawn on, just so you know. Jenny and Alfred grew up and fell in love. One day, they got married. After the wedding, Alfred said, "Now that we're married, you must tell me about this green ribbon." "You still have to wait," said Jenny. "I'll tell you when the right time comes." Years passed. Alfred and Jenny grew old. One day, Jenny became very sick. The doctor told her she was dying, and Jenny called Alfred to her side. "Alfred," she said, "now I can tell you about the green ribbon. Untie it, and you will see why I could not tell you before." Slowly and carefully, Alfred untied the ribbon. Jenny's head fell off! Yeah, scary Halloween story. Super fun, right? And it had this incredibly terrifying illustration of Jenny's head rolling across the floor in front of the cat. Yay, happy Halloween. Okay, so it's time to get a little bit witchy. Now, a few years back, it got kind of popular for witches to become offended by the stereotypical image of the Halloween witch. Now, I'm not saying I don't understand why, because I definitely do. Witches are real people, and they're not always treated properly. And making jokes about witches doesn't necessarily help their real-life image. That being said, I am very fortunate to live in a place where I have the right to be both a silly cliche witch and a real-life witch. And I take full advantage of that. So I really, really love the Halloween witch, and I love the legends and the cliches and the myths that go along with it. If you follow the blog at thefatfeministwitch.com, or if you follow me on Facebook, in which case you can just search The Fat Feminist Witch, you'll know that this week I posted 2 different blog posts entitled Eye of Newt, Flying Ointments, Nose Twitches, and Frog Princes. So I put them in 2 parts because they're a little bit long, and these are all about the fun myths and legends associated with witches and Halloween. Let's start with one of the most common images of the Halloween witch, and that is that witch flying across the moon on her magic broom. Now, there are a million reasons why brooms got associated with witchcraft. For one thing, witches now, modern witches, legitimately use brooms, or what they call besoms, to cleanse space. So you can use a magical broom or besom to cleanse your space, either a small one to cleanse your altar or space around your home. It usually doesn't actually touch anything physical, but it is a cleansing tool. Now, in these myths, this is a mode of transportation, because every witch has places to go and people to hex, and the most common form of transportation has got to be flight. It's not like she could just hop in a car. The reason why it became a broom specifically, and the easiest answer, is just because of accessibility. Most witches in history have been perceived as women, and the woman's domain was always the home. A broom would be something that every woman had access to, whether she lived in a mansion or in a sketchy cottage in the woods with an awesome cauldron. So the broom is a symbol of the home and the hearth where the cauldron sat over that open flame, which is another image really associated with witches. And they've been used in legitimate magic for centuries, like I said, for spiritual cleansing. They can be made of specific woods or herbs. You can find them online, or a lot of kind of fancy artsy places will have special brooms now. I remember when I lived in Vancouver on Granville Island, there is a broom co there, and they actually make the brooms for the Harry Potter movies as well as just homemade brooms there, and they were really, really interesting. So if you're looking for something really cool and old school and witchy, you can still find that stuff. But brooms obviously didn't really fly on their own. That wasn't something they started to do first. So how did those brooms actually start to fly? It wasn't the broom at all, but it was a potion or a salve that was mixed up by skilled herbalists and witches, and that was theoretically applied to the broom. These are called flying ointments, and I am going to begin by saying that I am not an expert on flying ointments. These are something that skilled herbalists make because they involve herbs that are psychoactive and can be poisonous. So I don't suggest just going out and making your own flying ointment without being taught how to do this specifically by someone who knows. If you check out the blog at thefatfeministwitch.com, on part 2, I believe, I talk about flying ointments, and I link to Sarah Ann Lawless and her website. She is the queen of the flying ointment, and she sells some through her website, so that's where I recommend getting them. So flying ointments have traditionally been made with a mixture of really psychoactive herbs like nightshades, henbane, and mandrake, which are all extremely poisonous. And this mixture was applied all over the skin and would make the witch fly, or at least feel like she was, because she was tingling all over. The most important ingredient in a proper flying ointment, according to Susan Weed, is a toad. Many toads all over the world secrete psychoactive chemicals from their skin, you know, the old adage about licking toads, which can add to the effect of the herbs and produce some of the same effects. Toads are also a really serious symbol of magic and witchcraft, for all of the reasons in all sorts of magical historical texts. You know, sometimes they were associated with the satanic version of the witch who had a familiar that was actually a demon, and toads were selected because they were kind of slimy and gross. But they're also a nighttime animal who's very versatile, who lives out in nature, a very natural animal. So they're associated with sort of like the quote-unquote good witchcraft as well. The toad is often boiled in oil, which ick, and then poured over herbs such as poison hemlock, mandrake, belladonna, henbane, datura, monk's hood, tobacco, mugwort, or mullein. The mixture is applied to sensitive areas like between your toes, armpits, chest, temples, third eye, and then this is where the witch's broom comes in. The story goes that it is applied to the handle of the witch's broom and then put between the legs, which comes into contact with the most sensitive skin at all. Again, this is not a thing I recommend doing without some supervision and serious instruction. Some modern witches will skip the toad and combine herbs with a slightly less chance of actual poisoning you, and things like beeswax and coconut oil, and they use them in a less, just a less intense way, and they use it more of a balm to open their third eye to enhance astral travel. But like I said, Sarah Ann Lawless, who is the queen of flying ointments, makes real flying ointments with real sketchy herbs, and I highly recommend checking them out and trying them out just for fun. But not without some very real research. So on the blog, you can find a link to her website and some intros to flying ointments, which I recommend checking out. If clothes make the man, as Mark Twain would say, then the hat definitely makes the witch, and the high, pointed black hat with the wide brim is such a staple in witch myths that without it, I don't think I could celebrate Halloween at all. I have them all over my house. They're not just a wonderful fashion accessory, but great cheesy decor. These tall black hats were a common fashion statement kind of all throughout the world and history in various shapes and sizes. For most of history, they weren't associated with witches at all, but noble people, farmers, and super pious people wore a higher conical hat. Most depictions of witches from kind of classical antiquity depict these witches with long, crazy, unkempt, dirty hair. And it's because hair is really seen as a sex symbol. I'm not going to go into that a lot because that could go on as a topic for 100 years. But because a woman's sexuality was always seen as obscene and associated with the devil, the tempting flowing hair was a sign of women without morals. And women were also depicted nude for reasons like this. Women who don't behave are the ones who became witches, of course. Somewhere along the way, the witches started wearing black dresses and robes constantly in mourning associated with death, thick black boots with buckles, and this iconic pointy black hat. The most popular theory as to why comes from an unlikely source. So Quakers and Puritans believed in dressing very modestly, colors that didn't stand out, styles that covered up your body, buckles kept everything tight and in place, high necklines. They had bonnets that covered their hair, plain black dresses covered from neck to ankle. Popular for women, and even men wore high-colored shirts, short pants, and long socks until their shoes, right? Hats and boots with buckles were a common fashion statement for the Puritans and the Quakers. And during the height of religious discrimination in the U.S., when, right? Quakers were shunned by the Puritans because the Puritans didn't like anybody, apparently. And in true Puritan fashion, they started thinking of Quakers as heretics and even witches. And Quakers lived outside of society just a little bit. So when fashion statements changed, fashion within the Quaker community didn't really change with the times. And because the Quakers were becoming less and less popular and they were wearing these conical black hats, this started to become associated with an outdated, antique, and almost evil look. Poor Quakers. They got such a bad rap. Somewhere along the way, that the hat made its way onto the head of a witch, started getting into artwork, being associated with the devil and evil, and in all of our fun Halloween decorations. And luckily, witches have way better wardrobes now, but there's nothing quite like the classic pointy black hat. Though the Halloween witch is always warty and ugly and wearing her pointy black hat and riding her broom, some of us with a little bit more style like to emulate some fancier witches throughout history. So in the 1960s, a beautiful little TV show called Bewitched graced the airwaves, in which we were introduced to Samantha Stevens and her totally average normal husband, Darren, who is totally unaware when he married her that she is a witch. Of course. So Samantha, to activate her witchy powers, would twitch her nose side to side and things would happen like the dishes doing themselves or drinks would pour or she might simply vanish. The twitch of the nose has become just as iconic as a witch flicking her wrist, waving her wand, and speaking a spell or stirring a cauldron. Nowadays, everyone who twitches their nose can expect a fun little bewitchy response from everyone around. Later in the series, when Samantha had a daughter, the little girl would use her finger to make her nose wiggle and laugh about, all the problems she was causing for her father, who was about to have a heart attack. So the twitch became the signature of the witches in the show, and this is just because her nose was cute. Some people used to think maybe she had a prosthetic, an electronic nose that twitched for her, but no, she just had a very cute nose and a husband who was one of the writers on the show. He was such a fan of his wife's nose that he came up with the idea to make her stand out and show it off. Unfortunately, the trick to the nose isn't quite as magical as I wish it was. It turns out she was just twitching her lips, which made her nose move, which means we're all doing it right, which is great. But sometimes the film would be sped up to make it a little bit more funny or quick. Or the camera would zoom in and cut out her mouth from the shot to make it look a little extra witchy. And movie magic is real magic in my books. But the most authentically witchy thing about Bewitched is its effect on Salem, Massachusetts, and I would say even witchcraft and its accessibility in the U.S. Before the 1960s, Salem was not the witch haven we all know and love today. It certainly hasn't been forever. So for a long time, no one in the state really talked about their sordid history of religious prosecution and outright murder of average and innocent people who were not even witches. But in 1970, Bewitched came to Salem and filmed a few episodes there for one of their seasons. And the show got a really warm welcome from all the people there. And after the show premiered, Salem became again associated with witches in a little bit more of a fun way. And real witches, actual practicing witches, started showing up to Salem, with Laurie Cabot claiming to be the first one after that, of course. So that little nose twitch woke up a whole generation of witches and called them back to Salem, which I think is pretty cool and witchy. One of my favorite tricks from literary and fictional witches is the idea that they just be turning dudes into beasts all over the place. All over the place. You see it in Disney movies, you see it in horrific fairy tales, you see it in really badass Greek mythology. Witches just take no shit from men and will turn them into things like toads, pigs, boars, or beasts of all kinds. So that fairy tale of a princess kissing a frog, having him turned into a prince, and them living happily ever after as a reward for her selflessness is pretty common at bedtime. But why did the witch turn that poor prince into a frog anyways? Well, the reason is because Disney really sanitized our fairy tales. That's not the way the original story goes. So, as it was recorded by the Brothers Grimm, the princess, instead of kissing that frog, actually threw him against the wall in disgust. And this is what activated his transformation, because he got what he'd deserved. Turns out that prince was not so nice to a very average woman, and she ended up having magical powers. This was something you ended up seeing in the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast. He was shitty to that old lady. She turned out to be a witch, and she cursed him. Got what was coming to him, I say. So this is one that's pretty common throughout stories, and it's one that I totally love, especially when they turn them into toads and frogs. Get really cliche with it, and I get extra excited. These witches cast a curse on these beastly men to make their outsides match their insides. And all of these witches who cast this brilliant spell or curse got their brilliant feminist ideals from one very special witch in Greek mythology, Circe, the goddess of magic and the daughter of Hecate herself. So Circe didn't really take disrespect from men, ever. She took no shit. And she often turned disrespectful and very lusty men into animals, pigs being her favorite version, and I can't say I blame her sometimes. Not everyone deserved it, I'm sure. She was a little bit, magic happy, but it was her island and she could do as she pleased. So Circe's island was inhabited by dozens of animals of all kinds, and anyone who had crossed her path when they shouldn't have ended up in a kennel. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus and his crew fall prey to Circe after feasting and drinking and lusting after her without offering up even a thank you. Odysseus has to consume a holy herb named moly, and I mean, yes, that is the holy moly and the origin of that expression, to help him resist her magic, and is warned that she will try to steal his manhood. Literally, she will try to castrate him. So he spends a year on the island wearing Circe down before she eventually agrees to let him and his crew free, and even offers up directions into the underworld and through the lair of the sirens. What a wonderful woman. She really is a nice lady. And she's the inspiration for all of the lovely witches since, who have given us beasts and beauties and all of the other toads and slimy frog princes that we've gotten to read about over the years. Definitely one of my favorites. And before we get on to our sketchy urban magic rock, let's talk about the wickedest witch of all, the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. She broke the mold in the world of witches. She had it all. She had black clothes, the pointiest hat, green skin, a big curly nose, a flying broom, a giant crystal ball. I mean, it was huge. And she even had a big pack of flying monkeys that did her bidding. I mean, she was just living the life. So she lived in a big dark castle and wanted to ruin the happiness of children, and I respect that. So thanks to her and her brilliant portrayal by Margaret Hamilton, who really, I can't imagine the Wicked Witch without her. The Wicked Witch has become the witch that all witches want to be. The green skin is one that is often copied at Halloween, and a lot of people have zero idea where it came from. In fact, I have no idea where it really came from. What I have is theories. So I have the book version of The Wizard of Oz. I have the whole series by L. Frank Baum, and never one time is that green skin mentioned in the book, although she did have an eye patch, which I'm now sad was missing from the film. A pretty common theory is one that matches the story of the ruby slippers. The ruby slippers were not ruby in the books, but this was one of the first movies ever made in color, or released in color. Thank God for Technicolor. So the silver slippers became sparkling rubies. Maybe the witch's skin became green just so that they could have that fun effect, because no one's ever been able to see it before. A second or kind of attached theory is that at this time, movie posters and stuff like that, and in artwork, green skin was always associated with monsters, the undead, and illness. So anytime you had movie posters for something featuring monsters, the monsters were usually green. Monsters like Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, I guess you could say. So Frankenstein's monster was made from real human skin. You know, why would he be green? Well, it's because green is a color that's associated with illness, especially in the skin. It's also just a little bit more colorful and fun, so it's eye-popping on those color posters. And I believe that this green skin, not only was it popular at the time to depict like kind of inhuman monsters that way, but it also made it clear that she was very different from Dorothy and anyone else around. I think so anyways. So even the flying monkeys have been very associated with witches since the release of the film and the book. You can get flying monkey candles made by actual witches. Dorothy Morrison has magical candles, and one of them is a flying monkey's candle. And the image of the flying monkey is usually presented like a protective thing because they were the witches' army. So flying monkeys are a symbol that's associated with protection for witches now. And she had this beautiful green skin. And finally, the thing that could do in the wickedest witch of all for good, the plain water. This is another thing that no one seems to really understand. And again, I don't have a solid explanation for you. But in the book, you hear these allusions all the time to the witch being dried up inside, devoid of all life and pure evil. So since water is the purest substance on earth and the source of all life, such a powerful force like water could never mix with something as evil and soulless and dried up like the witch without some consequences. Drowning was also a common way of disposing of suspected witches in the Middle Ages, and even used as a test to determine if one was a witch. Witches apparently don't sink, can't stand to be in the water, and so they would float to the top and escape. Which is really funny because witches now are known for taking a lot of baths. When it gets right down to it though, I think the most wonderful thing about the Wicked Witch of the West is her awesome spooky witch castle and that giant crystal ball. Did you guys see that thing? That giant red crystal ball? It's amazing. It's my favorite thing about the whole movie, no joke. Okay, so those are some of my favorite myths and legends and fun little trivia facts about some of the Halloween witches that we're used to. If you guys want to see a little bit more, you can visit the blog. I've got 2 different blog posts about it. Now we'll be moving on to our newest segment of Sketchy Herbs and Magic Rocks. Since this is a special Halloween edition of Sketchy Herbs and Magic Rocks, we're going to cover the witchiest herb around and the crystal that powered an entire magical city. So our sketchy herb today is Eye of Newt. And yes, I mean Eye of Newt. No, I do not mean Newt's eyes, I mean Eye of Newt. The Eye of Newt that was mentioned by Macbeth's witches. So, in Macbeth, you have these wonderful 3 old haggy witches. They really fit in with the cliche. and they're mixing up their magic potion, and they're talking about all the disgusting things they're throwing in it. Eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. Super spooky, right? Possibly the most famous ingredient, of course, in the witch's brew is Eye of Newt. Luckily, it's not quite as gross as it sounds, and no newts have to die for you to witch it up Elizabethan style. Eye of Newt in Shakespeare's time was a cute, kitschy little folk name for a really mundane ingredient, mustard seed. Yes, mustard, the stuff you put on your hot dog. When you're kicking it magical style with mustard seed, you want to get a hold of black mustard seed. And you can get it from Richter's, or many herb suppliers carry black mustard seed as it's a staple in South Asian cooking. Eye of Newt is used in fertility, protection, and psychic power magic. Scott Cunningham does have an entry for mustard seed, but he doesn't include the folk name of Eye of Newt, even though he does include folk names for most of his herbs, so maybe he didn't know, but he still lists it as a very much magical ingredient. So black mustard seed is often used as an aphrodisiac and can be used in love or fertility spells. You can sprinkle it onto thresholds and use it almost like a black salt or a brick dust for protection and to keep unwanted spirits from entering. That's an old Italian custom, and it's used by some witches for flight or astral travel. I also believe that it's modern, quote unquote, because Shakespeare was kind of a long time ago, but its modern association with witchcraft makes it an excellent addition to almost anything that you're doing that you just want to add a little bit of witchiness to. So this is something you add to incenses or blends that you just want to be a little bit witchier, stuff to become stronger, more confident, powerful, magical, psychic, mysterious. You can add it to things like black salt mojo bags and a new moon bath. It's awesome for new moons because it's dark and it's a bit mellow, but it's still a little bit fiery and installs confidence and power that you need for like a new cycle of regeneration. Its protective abilities also make it really, really good for use during spirit communication if you do celebrate Samhain. So check out some Eye of Newt. What Witch's Herb Cupboard is complete without some very good Eye of Newt. You can get it from Richter's Herbs, and I've linked back to that on the Sketchy Herbs and Magic Rocks blog post for today. So our magic rock is emerald, like the city. It's so beautiful, and I know what you're thinking. Geez, Paige, how rich do you think I am that I just have emeralds lying around? Don't worry, sit tight. So green, as a color, has a million associations in magic stuff and in mundane stuff. It's associated with money, with the heart chakra, with healing, jealousy and envy, obviously, hope, renewal, new growth, spring, all that kinds of stuff. That makes emerald a really amazing and super multi-purpose crystal for all kinds of magic. So I know you don't all have access to a set of crown jewels, and don't worry, that's not what I'm telling you to go out and grab. A lot of metaphysical stores now have begun carrying these raw and rough pieces of emerald, and I've put a picture up on the blog so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. This is not a big, brilliant green, jewelry quality stone. This is still a beautiful, rough stone with shards of emerald kind of showing up all over the place. In stores that I work at, I make it a point to point out emerald to a lot of people because it's something that I find makes a lot of people just feel very good. I like to recommend it in use in prosperity magic, not just because it's green, but it's also because it's a very expensive, luxurious stone. It makes people think of prosperity and of being rich, so it's historically been associated with good luck of all kinds. That makes it perfect for prosperity magic. It's also associated with magic and intelligence, mental prowess, and it has been since ancient Egypt. So this is a good stone to keep on your altar when you're trying to manifest some really serious magical goals. It's another one to include in spells to just make things witchier, so it works really good with the Eye of Newt. Another good use for emerald is love and relationship spells. It's really strongly tied to the heart chakra and is a powerful stone for healing jealousy and pain in relationships. So if you're trying to get over issues of infidelity or feeling anxious and jealous for no reason, this is a really good stone to meditate with, and you can place it right over your heart. It has a really happy, loving, joyful energy, and I've seen a few websites call it the stone of successful love for all those reasons. So emerald is really great for manifesting things, whether it's luck, money, love, super magical powers. Emerald can help you bring it into the physical world from the magical. That's kind of its connection. And you can get emerald in a bunch of really interesting ways from Stonebridge Imports here in Ontario. So you can get it in rough pieces, tumbled stones, pendulums, and pendants. And if you buy it through the link on the blog, you will be supporting the podcast. So check out some Eye of Newt and some emerald to kind of bump up your magic for your special Halloween evening. Thank you so much for listening to the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. I hope you are getting ready to hand out candy to a bunch of very adorable trick-or-treaters. Have a wonderful Halloween. Thank you to everyone who has been messaging and contributing and listening and waiting. It really means a lot to me that I could come back to work and feel like I was missed. I didn't really expect that. I don't know why I didn't expect it, but I did. So thank you very much, and everybody have a really happy and spooky Halloween.